Welcome to Season 5 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises. This podcast is for teachers who are considering leaving education but feel like they have no options. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. I'm a career transition coach who guides overwhelmed teachers through a 5-step process out of education and into a life they love. I'd like to see a world where the work of teachers is valued and respected, and that teachers have a career pathway that enables them to continue to offer value to society beyond their work in the classroom. So in this season, we'll be speaking with wellbeing experts who can help you to stay well as you plan your exit. If you're almost ready to leave and you need to redo your resume, check out my Resume Revamp digital download. It's a comprehensive guide to making your resume show off your assets. For $49.95 Australian dollars, you'll get pre-filled, eye-pleasing resume and cover letter templates in both US letter and A4 size, a lexicon of teacher terminology with a translation to corporate speak, and a bonus PDF on getting past applicant tracking software. Check out the Resume Revamp package on the product page of larksong.com.au and come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Episode 1. Hi everyone and welcome to the show. On today's show, I'm really pleased to be interviewing Karen Thompson Anderson, who is a wellbeing coach and has become a dear friend actually over the past 2 or 3 years. And we were having coffee the other day and she was talking about a program that she created around goal setting. And I've been trying to work out what is going to be the first episode of season 5 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast, which is about I'd already planned that it would be about well-being and fostering well-being as you make your exit out of teaching. So while you're in the job, working out how to stay well while you're planning your escape. And it just like smacked me in the head. I've got to get Karen on the show. And she said yes. So here we are. So thanks very much, Karen, for coming on the show today.
No, absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me here, Elizabeth.
All right, so you're going to share some insights and some wisdom with us today. Where should we start?
Thank you. Okay, so I suppose I would start with what is the difference between a well-being approach to goal setting and perhaps what we're used to doing, because
hang on a sec. Sorry, I'm going to stop you there, Karen. So Karen's actually screen sharing now, and for the people who are watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see it, but if you're listening in, we'll try and explain what you can see, and if you're really keen to actually see the video of this, then we'll put the YouTube link to this episode in the show notes. All right, keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
Fantastic. No, thank you, Elizabeth. So I wanted to start by, I guess, acknowledging that we're all goal setters in our different ways. We've all learned something about, seeing something that might need our attention and wanting to grow, wanting to do better and setting ourselves better, some intentions around our well-being. But I wanted to speak specifically to some of the ways that we can maybe stretch ourselves to be more kind, more friendship-oriented with ourselves when we're approaching goal setting. So one of the things I used to do, and I'm just talking personally, was that I used to evaluate myself a lot and do a bit of self-judgment. And that can be often where we start when we're wanting to set goals, is like, if I go and have a look at how things are working right now, I can see some areas that need fixing or changing, and I can be a little bit self-judgmental about some of those areas. Maybe I can talk to myself a bit in a blaming way for not having made more progress in that area already, those sorts of things. It can be easy to judge ourselves when we're looking at goal setting. So I'm just naming some of the ways we can get caught. We might also strategize and set targets and then apply willpower. And so I'm going to talk quite a bit about willpower and why I think in some ways it can be helpful, but that it can also be the very thing that sets us back. And then I think the last thing that we can often do, and certainly I was caught up in a lot, was making demands of myself. And I have this image of the weight loss coaches on the TV that really go hard on the people that are in their teens about getting the goals done, even if it means they're throwing up on the side of the, off screen and stuff. Like I have this this cycle of self-talk and extreme bullying that we can do to ourselves when something really is important to us, and how sometimes that can get a bit out of hand, how we treat ourselves when we're attempting to make change. So I'm just wanting to name some of the ways that are less helpful, less life-serving in goal setting that I've come across. And now let's have a look at some of the ways that maybe are a bit more of a well-being approach. So I call this approach more like a well-power than a willpower. It's just a play with words, but it's this distinction between attempting to push with willpower and stretch with willpower. So with willpower, there's a push, but what we're pushing against is actually our own resistance. Because there's a part of us that doesn't want the change. There's a part of us that wants to stay in the comfort zone where we already are. And if we are needing to use willpower, then we're attempting to push against the part of ourselves that doesn't want the change. And sometimes it's as simple as, I like to eat chocolate every night with a cup of tea after dinner or something. And it's a little bit of a push, like, okay, every couple of nights instead of every night. And so there's only a little bit of willpower required, and a little bit of willpower might be enough in that situation. But sometimes it's really big, and there's a really big no in the part of us that wants to resist. And that's where we need a better approach, or a more friendship approach to discovering how to move forward with our goals. So
okay, can I just ask, so
yeah,
or like get some clarity. So basically what you're saying, I think, is that normally if we're trying to stop a behavior, we would berate ourselves and say, come on, stop eating chocolate, or whatever it is, whatever the thing is that we want to change, and get kind of angry and annoyed at ourselves. But what you're saying is, rather than using your willpower, which there's a lot of research, can't say that, that shows that you kind of run out of puff, like your willpower muscle gets tired doing that. But you're saying, what if you be a bit kinder, and the willpower is more about just a stretch of that. It's not kind of, you don't have to bully yourself into submission.
Thank you. That's, yeah, it's exactly it. So my sense is that there is a place for willpower, even though I've made it, I know that there's times where it's less life-serving to use that push approach, but there are times where it's appropriate, because we do need a little bit of activation energy to get started. But it's that maintenance that you're talking about, that's being able to sustain change. And I think that's where I really want to focus tonight. Yeah. The willpower approach is that as you stretch yourself, you're actually, when you think about stretching a muscle, you want to give it a workout. You want to stretch it a little bit so that it feels like you're giving it, you're pulling on the muscle in a way that you're giving it a workout, but you're not stretching it so far that you hurt yourself. It's giving yourself a stretch zone to grow into, and being clear what that next step stretch zone is for yourself when you set a goal. Not, to set a goal inside that stretch zone, not so far out of what's realistic for you, so that you're mindful about this goal setting in the first place, like what goals you're setting. So there's a couple of extra distinctions here. One is that I think we've started to talk about this one. This is the not wanting to get caught in the power over, trying to push ourselves by taking a dominant approach with ourselves. That what we're really looking for is cooperation between our parts. And what I mean by that is, in my own example, I had I'd been doing comfort eating all through COVID, and including chocolate with my cup of tea at night. And I had started to realize, like, I'm not enjoying my sense of self-acceptance. I was starting to lose self-acceptance based on the extra kilos and the discomfort I was in my clothes, and just it was having an impact in my life. And I had looked at my physical health and thought, I really want to set some goals around feeling stronger and fitter, and like take off a couple of kilos. And the harder I tried, the worse it got. The more I'd go to the cupboard, the more I'd eat chocolate. Like, it was really, I was finding myself my own worst enemy in this battle, I'll put in inverted commas, to make a change. And what I ended up doing was turning to the part of me that was the resistance. So I did a little bit of deeper self-empathy, and I talked to the part of me that was actually not cooperating with this change that I was wanting to make. And I got connected to, oh, I remember being 15 and how nervous I was about boys at school and things that were happening in my world, and just being at home by myself after school. And I would comfort eat as a way of dealing with being 15 and a bit on my own and not being sure in the world. And so when I got connected to her and sort of made friends with that part of myself, I asked for her cooperation. I said, if we could just be together in this and a little bit firm, then the acceptance that you really valued when you were 15, we're going to have that with ourselves. So I actually connected to the acceptance I was longing for when I was 15. And I turned it into I connected with myself about how that was going to help me to move forward today. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense on one level, but and I get the idea that if you're trying to resist and, tap into your willpower, that at some point you're going to revolt against that because it's being imposed. You're almost imposing this restriction on yourself. And then, our natural desire is to fight back because, you're constraining me. How dare you constrain me? Self, I'm going to fight back. So I want to know in more detail how you worked the other side of that, which is how do you connect with that, the 15-year-old that needs to be nurtured?
So perfect question, because this is about starting to learn, I suppose, what I call the friendship skills, which for me is my approach to well-being, is to understand that we have a relationship with ourselves, we have a relationship with our world. So we have a relationship with other people, we have a relationship with our physical world, our physical health, we have a relationship with our body, we have a relationship with our finances and all these areas of our life. They're a relationship. And if you have an enemy in that relationship, if you're bringing like a sense of, say, for example, in my financial area for a long time, I had a power under, power over. I'd try to control my finances really tightly, and then I'd feel helpless because my finances would get out of management. And so I had a power over, power under, sort of power struggle relationship with finances. And then I got conscious that all of these areas of my life, they need a friendship approach, not a power struggle approach. A power struggle approach is like the willpower. It's only short-lived, and it doesn't actually get the long-term sustainable change that we're after. We need to bring friendship. So I did some research in the neuroscience of well-being, and this is from some years ago. It's on YouTube still if you want to check it out. It's by Richard Davidson, and it's this conversation about these questions for well-being. And this is what spurred me on to create the friendship skills. So his first question in that video was, how rapidly can I recover from adversity thinking? And I added this adversarial thinking about whatever it is that I'm trying to change. So if I'm trying to change my fitness or my finances or change my job and do different things in my life, if I'm seeing struggle and power and like I have to push and I have to and this thing has got the better of me, and I feel powerless. That's not a friendship relationship with that struggle. That's a whole heap of mental stories about how we're not doing well in that area. So if we bring compassion, we can start to overcome the way that we feel adversarial with challenges in our life. We can feel really struggling to overcome challenges in our life. But if we bring a compassion, we can start to gentle and warm ourselves towards a new way of seeing those challenges. Is that making sense?
Okay, so going back to your chocolate was a nice example. It's kind of a low stakes, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah.
It's a low stakes example. How do we bring compassion to the chocolate scenario?
Yeah. So I might have had, say, 3 or 4 pieces of chocolate more than what I wanted, or maybe half a block, whatever it was. And instead of I hate myself for eating that chocolate. I never can control myself around chocolate. I'm useless with chocolate. Like, instead of doing all of that, and then, doing that, I hate my body when I look in the mirror. Those sorts of really aggressive, like we're treating ourselves as an enemy in that scenario. Instead, we can go and feel into our hearts of like, oh, I noticed when I remember just now having had that extra half a block of chocolate, and I can feel embarrassment and a bit of shame that I didn't hold my own promise to myself to only have 1 block or 1 piece, or to not have any chocolate tonight. And I haven't kept my agreement with myself, and I feel sad. And I long for that part of me to just feel safe, that it can manage the discomfort of sitting here with my feelings without reaching for the whole block of chocolate. Like, I have compassion for myself that this is the way I've always done it. This is the way I've learned how to cope with some of my uncomfortable stuff. And right now, in this moment, I just have compassion for myself for having eaten that chocolate.
Right. So if we go then to the idea of someone who's trying to get out of teaching, say.
Yeah.
And one part of them is like, I really want to do it. I have to keep trying. I have to keep pushing. I've got to keep applying for jobs. I've got to fix my resume and do my LinkedIn profile. And there's like 1,000 tasks that need to happen in order for this scenario to play out in the way that you want it to go. But it's overwhelming, and you're tired, and you've got your own children maybe to look after, and you've had a big day at work, and it feels really hard, and you just can't be bothered when you get home. And then the next day when you wake up and you have to go to work again, you go, oh, why didn't I apply for that other job? I'm so mad at myself right now. I totally can I'm talking myself into a frenzy here, but like, I totally can understand how people would have those conversations with themselves. And the stakes, I think, are so much higher than a half a block of chocolate or whatever, because this is about the way you live your whole life, like your whole well-being is surrounded with the not taking action that is going to benefit you in the long run. How do we navigate through that?
Yeah, well, it's the very same approach, and I'll speak to all 4 of the friendship skills, but I'll stay with the compassion on this one that you've particularly just brought with you now, is that it would take compassion in that situation to wake up in the morning and notice that you're about to go into self-berating, interrupt the self-berating and say, gosh, you have 2 kids. Can you remember? Can you be a little gentle with your 5 kids? Or, you had so much on your plate last night when you got home. Like, just breathe. We can still apply for new jobs. And your courage and your strength to get up again today, it's enough. Like, be gentle. It's okay that we're struggling with this. This is a really big life decision. So trying to find those words isn't easy as a first go, especially when it's a really big life change like that. And I do encourage people to get support, like with you and other coaches, to get that support to be able to implement on big change, because it is enormously challenging at that sort of scale. But
so what you're talking about there is that self-care and self-compassion, where you actually like view yourself in the way that you might, or talk to yourself in the way that you might talk to a friend in the same position.
exactly, and it's definitely one of the like when I'm saying neuroscience of well-being, I'm saying that in the brain lights up around the way we treat ourselves and gives us more creative potential, gives us more capacity for resilience when we're in a kind state with ourselves. So compassion is one of these 4 friendship skills that actually has been proven in the neurosciences to make a direct difference on how you feel capable and resilient and experience well-being. So compassion is the first one. How rapidly can we recover from that adversity thinking when we get caught up in it? How quickly can we interrupt it and bring ourselves back to a state of compassion for ourselves? The second question that Richard Davidson came up with, how effectively do I linger with life-serving moments? And I turned that into, it's a friendship skill of gratitude. How do I practice gratitude for myself and my life and the things that are working? It's sort of like the appreciative inquiry model. We want to appreciate and have gratitude for the things that are working, as much as we remind ourselves of the things that are not working, because we have a very strong programming to be very risk oriented and be looking everywhere for the things that aren't working, but we're not reminding ourselves of how far we've come, what we've had to navigate, what we also have to do with our lives in terms of raising kids or running a household and a partnership, or however we're navigating life. It's not in a vacuum when we're trying to make change. We're holding lots of other things. So remembering that we've come so far, that we've already accomplished so much in our lives to be where we are today, and to have sort of gratitude for ourselves and our efforts as a part of the process of helping the brain come to the change that we're wanting to make. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, and as you were saying that, I'm thinking a lot of the teachers who I've worked with are in their later part of their career, and they might have young adult children or late teenage children, and they've also got their aging parents to care for. So they're in what's called the sandwich generation, where they're possibly unlike the parents' generation, where often the parents would have died younger. They're living a lot longer. So like my mum's in her mid-80s now, and she's still very well. She plays golf. She's totally with it. But I imagine in another 10 years' time that I might need to give her more support, or maybe 5 years' time, not sure. And yet our children are still, they're young adults. They're navigating the world quite well on their own, but every now and again they still need a little bit of support. And so if I was still teaching, I'd be juggling all of that and my mum, who doesn't live anywhere near me. We've had my husband's dad living with us for a long time. He's in an aged care home now, but he lived with us for 6 years while I was working. And, if he had to go to hospital or something, I'd have to go and do my day of work, visit him on the way home, come home, cook dinner, feed everyone, get everyone in, organised for school the next day, and then, collapse in a heap. Thankfully, Netflix didn't exist at the time, so I had no opportunity to binge watch a series instead of taking, responsibility for all of those various things. But it was hard. And actually, my youngest daughter, she would make my lunch in the morning, because it was like I was stretched to the limit, Okay, so
I totally hear that, and I'm wanting to acknowledge you for all of those years and all that effort. And I'm wanting to, I'm wondering, do you remember very often appreciating yourself for all your efforts? I mean, it's a new practice for most of us to acknowledge the effort and the time that we're putting into all the things that matter to us. Does that make sense with you?
yeah, I don't think I did. I didn't actually, it wasn't really until I did, after I was sort of, as I was on my way out, I I decided to do a Master of Applied Positive Psychology, and that's where I came across that term
Yeah.
self-compassion that I'd never really heard
Mm-hmm.
before. And I was like, what what is this strange and wonderful
Mm-hmm.
beast? And I remember drawing a picture of someone in a bubble bath, like in my notes, like I was taking notes in the lecture. And actually I wouldn't call that self-compassion so much anymore. I'd maybe call that
Mm-hmm.
self-care. But self-compassion is more about having that empathy, I think, for yourself.
It definitely is, and that's where I'm going next. So that's perfect segue. I actually want to say that the next very question that Richard Davidson asked was, what ability am I demonstrating? Focus my attention and be present. And what the neurosciences have now caught up with, including being present, is a genuine warmth. So it's sort of that combining self-compassion with this attention and focus and presence with ourselves. This capacity for empathy with ourselves is now very widely, or more widely, known as a key neuroscience breakthrough. So we understand that the brain needs us to be genuine and warm and focused on what matters to us to actually help us to do the breakthroughs that we want to make in our lives. So really important. Self-compassion. Yes, I think we've outgrown the smaller notion of self-care just being a bubble bath or a massage once in a while. It's evolving that whole science of what is self-care and self-compassion. And the last friendship skill there, Richard's last question was, what is my capacity for generous altruism today? And so that's, for me, that's the friendship skill of generosity. Can I be generous with what I'm guessing about other people and myself? So say, for example, maybe I'm feeling frustrated with, say, a child, one of my adult kids, and I'll go, instead of going, they always do this, and carry on in my head about how they're lacking in any kindness or whatever, I might try and be generous and go, well, what I did see was that they tried to be patient with me or patient with themselves, and I'm going to guess that they were doing the best they could. So Brene Brown talks about it. She says, in her research about shame and about the people that she did the research that were the most compassionate were also ones that could be the most generous, and guessing of other people's intentions. So instead of guessing other people were out to get them or, like maliciously inclined, they would guess that the person was doing the best they could with what they had.
Yeah, and I think that's actually really interesting, like just in education. I think, I would have days where I hadn't possibly been my best self. And I would get, annoyed at myself, but then I would also need to give myself some compassion that actually it was tough. What I was dealing with on that particular day was difficult, and that it wasn't that none of us in the school woke up that day, and this might be contentious to say this, but I don't think anyone who's a teacher wakes up in the morning and thinks, how can I really make someone's life a misery today? I don't think that's, and I don't think it's the administration's intention either.
Mm.
They might inadvertently do that. They might make your life a misery, but I probably have encountered one person in high up leadership who I wonder if that was intentional. But
I would say if it was the case, then it would be, we were talking about mental health issues, which is the opposite of what is well-being, right? So when people are actively not operating in these realms of friendship, then there's a mental health issue. That's for me, that's the distinction.
Or like sociopathy or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But by and large, I think even the leaders who I felt were perhaps missing the mark in some way, I don't think that they were actually actively trying to make everyone unhappy. They were just doing the
I think
best
that's a very generous assumption, and what I would say is that falls into that category of being generous with your assumptions. It soothes your own brain And it makes dealing with other people a lot easier if you're assuming that they're doing the best they can. And then you can check with them and ask. I mean, that's a part of learning the language of putting all of this wellbeing friendship into practice. But I want to speak specifically now about this model of wellbeing that I'm using now to help me to orient about where I'm doing growth, where I'm setting goals, and really making sure that I'm just checking my own backyard with the things that are important to me and making sure that I haven't got any wild blind spots where I'm not taking care of myself. So this is a wellbeing model that has 6 main aspects. I'll just name them around the circle and then I'll speak to them briefly. There's the social well-being aspect. There's the time and space aspect, purpose and meaning, our physical body and our environment, our finances, and our relationship with technology. So they're the 6 of them. I'm just going to step them through briefly, but what I want you to do as I step through these is maybe have a think about what aspect would you like to focus on, because I'm going to give you a little opportunity in this next few slides to actually have a practice with doing some friendship skills with a goal that you might like to set in one of these aspects. So I'll speak them through and you just have
so you're going to get me to do this homework now.
I am. I'm going to get you. I'm going to ask you, Elizabeth, to do this through with us. And I'm also going to invite the people who are listening and watching along is, if you want to pause and ask these questions and reflection. This is an opportunity for you to do this little exercise of reflection and see what comes alive for you and see if it's different to what you might normally have come up with goal setting, the way you might normally do it. So I'll speak through these 6 aspects and then I'll invite you to pick one that you want to work on. Okay. Social wellbeing holds a space for friendships and community groups who are a part of our personal and professional work and partnerships and teams, family teams. It can also include our family that's passed over or still to come. And it might be, for the kids in our community that's yet to arrive. Or the kids of our kids, that sort of longer term view of our social and community aspect. The time and space aspect in this notices how we relate with time and how we create space for ourselves. So this can be an aspect where we notice how much time we actually carve out to take care of ourselves, or how much time we might put in our diary for, even doing self-reflection and self-care. This is where I put like time to do a walk in the morning and have time to contemplate for the day for myself. So then the purpose and meaning aspect, I call also meaningful living and dying, because I think it holds as much about how we live purposefully aligned with things that matter to us, as much as how we do our exit and our leaving, and even how we do our leaving, not just of the body, but how we do our leaving in circumstances like leaving an employment situation where we might have been for a long time. Like, how do we want to do well-being as we're leaving, which is what you asked at the beginning of the show. And so what I'm really connected to is that leaving and arriving to where we want to be are both well-being, they're both opportunities for bringing these friendship skills to life. The next one's physical body and environment, and this aspect holds a space for how you connect with your physical health, your even like, do you know some of the names of your organs and like where they are? Do you have a sense of also relationship with the body underneath us, like this earth body that we walk around on every day? Do we have a relationship with sacred lands, relationship with nature, with trees, sun and the moon and the planets, that sort of thing? How do we relate to our environment? Our physical body is part of a much bigger body and environment. So that's that aspect. The next one is the financial and structural aspect. And this obviously holds our relationship around money and exchange and trading and power around money, how we relate to governance, admin, and so on. And then the final one, technology, which is, how do we hold a space might be for big tech, like AI, artificial intelligence, or it might be at the personal level. How do I relate to all my devices and my machines that I have in my life? Am I in a healthy range of relationship? Do I want to throw my computer out the window?
Right. How do I relate to the 1,000 files on my computer that I can never find the right one when I need it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's a whole dimension in itself. And of course, at the moment, we've got a lot of concern about children and their relationship with technology, abuse of technology and the psychological impact of that. So each of these domains or aspects of well-being, they all need our attention, whether we're 16 or 60. And we can look in our own backyard and we can do a little bit of a review over each of these aspects. And it actually gives us an opportunity to go, I hadn't thought of that, and hold a broader perspective on how we're operating with our well-being and our friendship with these aspects. Is there anything you wanted to ask about that before we sort of took forward?
No. I just, there are so many things I can think of that I want to address. Okay. I have to think of something now.
That's okay.
An aspect.
Well, think of an aspect. That was my invitation. Have a think of an aspect. I'm going to invite those who are listening to, if you can think back, I'll say them again. There was social, time, purpose, physical, financial, and technology.
Okay. So I have had the heads up about this, but I'm actually not going to do what we discussed. So sorry about that.
Okay. We're going to jump in, and I'm going to ask you, if you're listening, to think about something you're grateful for in one of those aspects. So if you've got an idea like, I think I want to focus in on my financial well-being aspect or my social well-being aspect, I'm going to share with you a little social well-being aspect example so that it gives you a bit of support to understand what I'm asking you to do. So with this, say I'm going to zone in on my social well-being aspect, and I'm going to focus in on a situation I'm grateful for. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to invite those who want to pause and have a think about that. And then we'll move on. And so the next part of this exercise, once we've picked our well-being aspect and once we've picked something we're grateful for, is to celebrate and mourn. So I want to demonstrate that. Okay. So the first thing I picked in my social well-being aspect was a gratitude I have that my mum and I do our supermarket shopping together on a weekly basis. And she's in her 80s and makes my shopping time a little bit more enjoyable to have company too. But I know that it makes a big difference to her. And so I'm going to celebrate something first about myself turning up for her. So I'm wanting to acknowledge that in this aspect of social aspect, there is something I'm wanting to change about this, but I'm noticing first that I have gratitude. And gratitude that with my mum, we go shopping together, and we've got this routine, and it works for me and it works for her. And I help by carrying her shopping bags, by being there if she has a query with the staff, with staff and needs help. I'm just there to support her with her trolley maneuvering and all the rest. So I celebrate myself turning up for her that way. And something I mourn about this is that I remember a year or so ago asking my sister to jump in and do every second week. And when I looked back, I started to get a bit resentful because I went, I'm helping and I'm totally fine with it and I'm enjoying it, but maybe I'd like my sister's help. And I started to have this story, my sister doesn't help. So instead of that story, I'm going to mourn. There's a difference between being in my suffering stories and mourning, which is much more connecting to what I'm sad about. So I feel sad and disappointed that I didn't reach out to my sister in a way that helped her to get connected to the joy of actually helping mum every fortnight, and to make a bit of an effort beyond like, I can't do Fridays and mum doesn't want to shop on any other day. And she sort of let it go and I let it go. But I would have liked to have done something more than that. Like I would have liked to have a sense of connection with my sister
right.
about.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like a little review of my social aspect, and I noticed that stood out to me, and I wanted to be grateful for something I am contributing, and also something I was a bit sad about not having her support.
Okay, so can I do that with time and space? Because I think this is really relevant to me right now.
Okay, go. Yes.
Okay, so I've been trying to write the Teacher's Escape Plan book for some months, and I am grateful that I've actually drafted some chapters. But what I'm mourning is that I will often wake up. So I'm nicer in the mornings, generally speaking, and and I've also got this conflict of wanting to go for a walk or get some exercise before uh, I settle down to do sedentary things. So I try to, get the blood flowing first. But I'm nicer in the mornings and I'm kind of more awake and more switched on. And so that's a good time to write as well. And so, and you've given me this lovely script. Thank you. So the wellbeing aspect I'm exploring is time and space. Something I'm grateful for that I'm reviewing is using my time in the mornings. Something I celebrate about myself in that situation is that I wake up early in the summer, and so I've got time in the morning. Something that I mourn about that is sometimes I just don't feel like doing it. I just feel tired and I don't want to get out of bed when the sun comes up. I want to stay in my nice bed and just rest. so then I feel sad that I missed an opportunity to do the things that I know I will serve me well if I do them.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's so beautiful that you share that, and I'm wanting to acknowledge those times when it is really hard. And I think this gives a perfect opportunity to come back to that resonant empathy skill that we talked about, one of the friendship skills, that when you have got something that you mourn, that there's a way to actually be with yourself. And that's the difference between grief and mourning. I'll just say quickly, grief is when you feel the loss and the sadness, and mourning is when you actively choose something to do about that. And sometimes it might be, for some people, it's to cry. For other people, it's to do art. For other people, it's to do self-empathy. Right? So this is one of the things that you can do when you have sadness come up in your being, in your body, and maybe you have tears come up at the back of your eyes and you're like, I'm really disappointed that I didn't get to do my exercises or my writing or something this morning. Like, I really missed an opportunity.
Or both.
Yeah, or both. And I'm behind on my book, the way I wanted to have made progress. And and I want to invite just a moment of, like, what we do is we slow our voices down and we increase the genuine warmth in our voice. And we say to ourselves out loud, if we can, if we're by ourselves or if we're in a supportive environment, we might say something like, I guess underneath that, the laying in bed and the sort of the disappointment about missing your chance to write this morning, Elizabeth, maybe what really matters to you is contributing this work into the world and supporting teachers that are in pain the way that you were before you got out of teaching. Like, and if you can bring your own genuine warmth to your own morning, then you can have a sense of empathy and self-connection with the pain that you're experiencing for not having contributed to your writing in that morning, instead of on that morning, instead of berating yourself and feeling awful and getting out of bed dejected because you didn't start the day you wanted to in the way you wanted to. And I'm wanting to bring these friendship skills to the fore so that we're actually using these friendship skills to build a resilience with ourselves, because we are not going to get it perfect every day. We are not going to make all the progress we want to make in the sort of mechanistic way that we're expected to make ongoing progress, continuous and, improvement and those sorts of things. Like, we are human beings, and there are days when our energy just isn't there. We might have had It might be a reaction to food we've had. It might be an illness. It might be it could be a whole range of reasons why you didn't get out of bed and needed the rest.
It wasn't a crazy dog barking all night because there was a big storm.
It could have been that, you see. So I'm wanting to say, of course you'd be disappointed. Starting with those acknowledgements of course you'd be disappointed, and bringing a warmth to your own voice with yourself. It's so, so very important. And I'll give you the completion of the piece of my example as well. What happened after, just to fill in the story a bit more, is that my sister and her husband and her son moved 2 states away. Not long, about 6 months after I'd had this idea where I could enroll my sister in contributing to the shopping. And now she lives a couple of hours flight away. She's not available to do the fortnightly shopping idea. And what I got to underneath my disappointment and sort of what happened about the resentment I was carrying was that I got connected to what I really wanted was more sense of sharing with my sister about my mum's aging. Because I was a bit scared of my mum aging and having to take care of her and what she might need. And I realized that the shopping was so much more meaningful to me because it was actually about that. It was actually about getting to know mum's wishes, getting to know, having a relationship with mum to be able to know how to take care in a way that she would want, and some of that advanced care planning. And I didn't want to do it all by myself. I really wanted her companionship. So I got connected to, I was worried about being alone in caring for my mum. And I really wanted to have companionship with my sister about navigating my mum's aging and end of life. So that got deeper to what was the real story, why I was having challenge in this area. But I needed to start with the gratitude of what I was pleased about, and then go to what was upsetting me, and then go deeper to what really matters to me. What really matters to me is having my sister's companionship and support in this aspect around her aging. So do you want to come back to your example and give us a go of what really matters to me is?
Yeah, well, I think you put it nicely when you said about supporting people who are in pain, or being able to support people who are in the situation that I was in, 5 years ago, and helping them to get through it with more ease and joy than I did. That would be immensely satisfying to me, I think. And so part of the writing the book would be to support that. And so, sorry, you have to show me the script again. It's about the supporting the people, who are in pain. I find that's actually highly motivating to go, oh, that's right. That's
why I'm doing it, right?
I forgot.
You just demonstrated perfectly.
Sorry, go on.
You've pipped me at the post, because you've just completely demonstrated perfectly why this system works, to motivate us to embrace the part of us that's resisting, so that we don't need to actually apply as much willpower, because we've got connected to what the true power, which is what really matters to us. So in my own example with my mum and my sister, I actually, once I got to the point of feeling my sadness and acknowledging what really mattered to me, I was able to reach out to my sister and organise with her and my mum to get on Zoom once a fortnight and start to have conversations about all of our end of life planning. So actually we're all doing things like, talking about things that we might want to have prepared, or requests that we might prefer, and things like that. We're doing it along with mum. So all of us are together in it. And I have such a sense of my need met around companionship. I really got connected to what I could do, as opposed to staying stuck in the resentment and the resistance of I didn't get my needs met, or I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. I'm powerless. I wasn't powerless. I just needed to be self-connected so I could find a new strategy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I love that you do that. I love that you have those conversations, because a lot of people don't want to have them and they don't plan. I asked my mum just on that topic, because when I was growing up, we had cassette tapes. That's how old I am. And we would, everywhere we drove, we listened to three: Neil Diamond, Glenn Campbell, and Barbara Streisand. Right? And that was my childhood. And so I said to her, Mum, what music do you want at your funeral? I have this discussion every now and again. And she said, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, how about a bit of Neil Diamond and Barbara Streisand? Maybe that duet, You Don't Bring Me Flowers. I don't know if you know that one.
Oh, tearjerker.
And she said, yes, that'd be great. So she's actually, of course she won't be there, in a sense, she won't be there. But she's excited about her own funeral now. Because it's going to be like music that she would love at the funeral. So sorry, I know that's a total digression, but I just thought I'd share that.
Oh, I love it, Elizabeth, and I'm so grateful you shared it, because it is a really meaningful, it's a big part of my purpose and meaning aspect, was to build a relationship with my mum and my sister around this end of life, and being sort of more conscious of having a lot of our organisation done so we can actually enjoy living. Like when that end of life and preparing for those decisions, it's tough. But if we do it when we're able to do it, we can get on with the living, knowing that some of those really hard conversations and tough stuff's already done. Like it's just, it was such a big piece of meaning for me.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess too, like just knowing that you and your sister are on the same page as well, really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. She's got dogs barking, and I've got my neighbour who is a music teacher doing a recorder lesson in the background. I think this episode's doomed to end soon. All right, so Karen, I'm assuming that you're going to be able to speak again in a second when the dogs calm down. What do you think we need to take away from our conversation today? What would be the most helpful?
Yeah, thank you so much, and I'm really grateful to have had this chance to share this wellbeing approach to goal setting with you tonight, and on this show. And I think the key takeaways for me, for people to remember, that goal setting is an opportunity to make better friends with yourself. That's my first one. The second one is turn to face what's restraining your progress with friendship.
Say that again. Turn around to face what's restraining your progress, rather than trying to push forward against yourself. Turn around and face what it is that's restraining you, because when you make friends with that, it's almost like the hooks will come out of your back and you'll be able to make progress forward. Okay. So it's like when you resist something and you're pushing against it, it's going to push back harder.
Yeah, it's going to persist. That's what you resist persists. And it's true in goal setting as much as it is in anything else. So you really, what you're looking for is a shift to friendship with what's restraining you. Turn to face the things that are challenging and find a way of being grateful. To remember to appreciate what you've already been able to do in your life, what you've already been able to survive and put up with and get through. Like we're all incredibly resilient to still be on the planet in these times. And I just want to acknowledge everybody for like doing the very best they can with what they have, and to be gentle with, there's some big changes we're all needing to make. And this is a really important time for us to support each other, connect with each other about these sorts of well-being changes that we can make. When we can make these changes personally, then we can bring them to our family context. We can ask our family to look at these well-being aspects together and make, well-being oriented decisions for our futures together. And even at the community level, I think we can refocus around what we'd like to have happen, and what's not worked as well as we'd like, and mourn those things and empower ourselves forward, rather than continuing to have power under and power over resistance and struggle and strife as a consequence of not having this wellbeing approach. So thanks so much for the opportunity to share it with you.
Well, thank you so much for giving us a strategy that's actually a life-serving, life-changing strategy that will make, if we use it, it will actually make life smoother, make our paths easier, wider, more comfortable. And also, I think it'll help with maybe just not always seeing the worst in the other, like the other person, that whoever we're in conflict with in that moment, or whoever's making our life a misery, actually just going, oh, hang on a minute, maybe they've got their own struggle, and I can at least have a glimpse into the possibility that they might need some empathy and friendship as well.
Oh, what a beautiful way to complete. Thank you, Elizabeth. That's wonderful.
Thanks so much for coming on the show, Karen. It's been awesome talking with you.
All the best. Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises, with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. Thanks for listening. If you need more support in your journey out of education, check out larksong.com.au, book a triage call, and take the Get Out of Teaching Readiness Scorecard. I've been where you are now, and you don't need to do this alone.